Hello, everyone. Welcome to Cheyenne Forum. Today is January 23rd, 23rd. Yes. Today we have our dear friend again, Tom, to talk about some very important questions and a big concern from our audience. Hello, Tom. Welcome.
Hello, Cheyenne. How are you?
Very good. So nice to see you.
It's great to be here. Great to be with you.
Sure. Thank you so much. So you know we're going to talk about today, right, Tom? It's
Yeah,
about
pretty good idea. Supreme Court decision concerning
exactly.
Texas and the Biden administration.
It's become a huge issue from yesterday, and lots of people are very angry about the decision, and people just feel that we lost control of our board and of our nation. So I heard some different thoughts about the decision, and I don't know what you think about the decision, and is that bad?
No, I think it's a good decision.
Oh, okay, okay,
Here's why. Not
sure.
that I like the Biden administration
Mhm,
and the fact that they've done nothing at the border
mhm.
and are going to continue to do nothing as long as the Democrats and Joe Biden are in office. Now, I don't
Exactly.
know if another Democrat took the presidency, if that would change, but it certainly is never going to change under Joe Biden. But
Mhm.
here's the issue with it. People need to consider that we have been wanting for a long time a Supreme Court that follows the Constitution.
Great.
And the Constitution designates the federal government. United States government is responsible for control of the borders, for
Right.
controlling who enters the country that way.
Mhm.
Now, the Biden administration obviously is failing at that duty.
Mhm.
That alone should have been enough to impeach him along the way for the last 3 years,
Mhm.
disregarding his duty to defend and protect the United States.
Mhm.
But in any event, the Constitution designates that the protection of the border needs to be in the hands of the federal government.
Okay.
Now, here's why it's good news.
Mhm.
Right now, federal government is not doing its job. Joe Biden is not doing his job.
Mhm.
Mayorkas, Homeland Security, not doing his job. So
Yeah.
anybody in the whole administration, and you could pick every other topic we can go into, doesn't seem like any of them want to do their job the way it's supposed to be, the
Sure.
way it's designated in the Constitution. Now,
Mhm.
here is the thing to look at. We
Mhm.
still have, 1 year of Joe Biden being the president, almost to the day,
Right.
next January in 2025. We're hoping that optimistically that he's not going to be the president.
Mhm.
And then what'll happen is, let's just say, hopefully,
Mhm.
Donald Trump is going to be the president
Mhm.
starting a year from now.
Mhm.
Well, what's Trump going to do but continue the wall to get it finished, continue everything that he wanted from the first term to be in place to shut down the border to illegal migration. Now, let's say also hypothetically that what if we got a Democratic governor in
Mhm.
Texas,
Mhm.
Arizona, New Mexico. We already have one in California. Fortunately, most of the migration is coming across the Texas and Arizona borders.
Mhm.
Now, if we have a president like President Trump, say, who's going to close that border, going to put the wall back up or finish the wall, do all of the things that it takes to create a barrier and checkpoints that people can't come in. To,
Mhm.
what do we want a Democratic governor saying, no, we're going to take the wall down. We're going to dismantle it. Because then what would happen is we'd be back to the Supreme Court hoping that they would say, well, if the president wants to finish the wall, he's the president. The federal government is supposed to control the border. So
Mhm.
what I'm saying is we don't want a future where a
Okay.
Democratic governor can undo the border on their own. It has
Right.
to be in the hands of the federal government, and it has to be in the hands of a constitutional president
Mhm.
running the federal government, not what we have now and what we've had for the last 3 years.
Mhm.
And we certainly don't want whatever good is going to be put back in place a
Mhm.
year from now, hopefully by President Trump. We don't want some idiot Democratic governor undoing it. So
I
that's why this is a good decision. Federal government controls the border, period. If it happens to be a president not doing his job, that's a different story. Impeach him. Do your duty. Republicans, do something about it. But don't let the states take over the border issue.
Okay, so I'm so glad that you're talking about constitution rights. I saw a Representative Ali Crane. He actually gave a speech yesterday about the Constitution, and he mentioned that the Article 4, Section 4 of our Constitution, he said, he read out that the United States shall guarantee to every state in the Union a republican form of government and shall protect each of them against invasion. The question is, if the federal government did not do their job, haven't do their job, or fail to perform, do the state have the right to protect themselves from
Well,
invasion?
they do, but not in the way that completely contradicts what the federal government's trying to do. The breakdown here is, frankly, the Republican Party in the United States House of Representatives, when we have a president not doing what he's required to do by the Constitution, they need to bring articles of impeachment. And
Okay.
that should have been done. He's had this policy in effect since day one. This isn't something that just snuck up on us. It's not the result of a hurricane blowing down the wall or any of that. This is a deliberate policy ignoring the constitutional duties of the president. It's been in place now for 3 years,
Right.
and the House of Representatives has done nothing about it. Now, true, it's only recently in the past year that the House has gone to the Republicans, but you don't see any effort other than, I think, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Congresswoman, wrote articles, but it didn't get anywhere. And the rest of the House has not backed that up. So it pretty much indicates that we have a president that's not going to do his job, and we have a House of Representatives that's not going to do their job. So you bring up a good point. Now that nobody's doing their job to protect the citizens of the United States, what can the states do? And I think that's the problem with this, that if you have a battle between state law enforcement and federal law enforcement at the border, obviously the federal law enforcement's going to win.
Right.
And in the long run, they should. But it's a very difficult question because we have so many people in Washington not doing their job.
Right.
And by the way, one more thing. If Texas, we've had an administration in Texas that could have been doing something also. If they were going to take the action and push this constitutional issue, push it 3 years ago when it would have mattered. Now they bring it, at this point, this kind of a battle, to me, it's just about too late to impeach Biden. There's almost not enough time for the House to write the articles, to vote, to have the hearings, to vote for the impeachment, to pass it. Then the articles, that would go to the Senate. The Senate is where the trial takes place of the actual impeachment.
Right.
So the Chief Justice, John Roberts, would be the judge presiding in the Senate chamber over the impeachment of the president. Well, by the time all of these things got put in motion, it's already going to be next year, next November for sure, if not next January. So really, the Republicans, the House of Representatives, well, of course, the House of Representatives under Pelosi wasn't going to do their job. So that's another separate issue. But, the other issue with this is that we need voters to wake up, get smart, and do their duty to help run this country, to help vote in people that are going to do their job. And when they don't, and when they allow people that are blatantly committing crimes, basically at that level, then that's a failure of voters also to do their part in their role as citizens of this country.
Thank you so much. And I have two questions to you. One is, at this moment, what the voters can do. Second is, my mind is blew away to 1776. I'm thinking when the founding father found this country, they have three branches. So we have the check and balance. The situation is when the administration and the Congress didn't do their duty. We have last barrier is the court, the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court need to do something when the two branches are filled. Do you think they are doing their job, the Supreme Court?
Well, the
To
Supreme Court, the role of the courts, the executive branch, legislative branch do their jobs, whatever. And it ends up in a court case at the lower level,
right,
then the appellate level,
right,
and then the Supreme Court. There are thousands every year, thousands of applications to
mhm,
the Supreme Court to
right,
hear an individual case.
mhm,
So I lose my case, I don't like it, I'm going to the Supreme Court.
right, right, right.
Well, maybe you aren't, because the Supreme Court picks and chooses from thousands of them and selects a few. It's called writ of certiorari. And
Mhm,
certiorari, or some say cert for short, but that writ is what the Supreme Court issues to say, okay, we'll hear your case. But they can only hear so many in one year. And it's
right,
not 1,000 or 5,000. It's just, so they pick the ones that they think will have either definitely been a wrong decision from a constitutional standpoint to try to revise it, or
mhm,
just to clarify issues of the Constitution. Now we're going to have, that come up now with the idea of states like Colorado trying to take President Trump off the ballot, saying that he committed an insurrection on January 6th. And
mhm,
as such, the word insurrection is in the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, Section 3, which says that if you committed insurrection, and the word is important, insurrection against the United States, you cannot run for a federal office.
mhm,
Now, that amendment to the Constitution was added in 1868,
mhm,
3 years after the end of the Civil War.
right,
When the Civil War ended in 1865, you had the leadership of the Confederacy,
mhm,
which included Jefferson Davis, the president of the Confederacy. It included the top generals of the Confederacy: Robert E. Lee, James Longstreet, Pickett, several other generals. They were extremely popular still in the South.
mhm,
So 1865, we have the reunification of North and South. We're
mhm,
back to being the United States of America, not the North and the Confederate States of America, but the United States. And the feeling in Congress and with many of the leadership in the North was that these generals were so popular that they might get elected in the South to high positions in the U.S. government. They may want to bring back slavery. They
mhm,
may want to undo the results of the Civil War.
mhm,
President Lincoln was gone, killed at that point in 1865. So he wouldn't be in a position to save the Union again.
mhm,
So that was the fear that the government pass an amendment, and not just a law, but make it a federal amendment as part of the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, and make it illegal for someone who fought. Now, an insurrectionist usually requires fighting
mhm,
against the United States government. There's no argument that the leadership of the Confederacy fought a war, killed people to
mhm,
try to establish their own country separate from the United States.
mhm,
So that was the purpose of passing that amendment. That also is the purpose of the Democrats on January 6th. They didn't call that a protest that got violent, or, the peaceful protest like we heard all summer in 2020. No, it had to be an insurrection. And the word was important because that's the exact word in the 14th Amendment.
mhm,
Now,
mhm,
ironically, the 14th Amendment is also called the Due Process Amendment, because it
mhm,
basically says everybody has the rights to due process, meaning a court case. They can't just be arbitrarily locked up,
mhm,
by whoever's in power, kind of like what we've seen in the
mhm,
past couple of years here. You have January 6 defendants that have been in custody 3 years, haven't been tried yet. So
mhm,
that's an example of another abuse of of constitutional law: the right to a speedy trial, the right to defend yourself. But those cases, if the first 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights, are ignored, the 14th Amendment was designed to say you have a right to due process. And that'll be a secondary issue in the Colorado case when the Supreme Court hears the arguments coming up, I think pretty soon. But when they hear the arguments of it, the things that are going to be argued from the Trump attorneys are going to be able to say there was no due process. Mm-hmm. Trump was not charged with insurrection, nor was anybody. 1,200 defendants, no one's been charged with insurrection. But specifically, Trump was not charged with insurrection. He was not tried and convicted of insurrection. Therefore, he, in this matter, has had no due process. So for the Supreme Court of Colorado to arbitrarily take him off the ballot in the upcoming election, the primary ballot, and presumably later the actual national election in November, for them to make that kind of decision without Trump not having any opportunity to in court address the charges, to defend himself, to say, no, we didn't do it. I didn't authorize an insurrection. And all of the defense that you're going to hear on the charges that he's facing, basically he's going to say, prior to January 6th, I offered 10,000 National Guard troops to the city of Washington. Mayor Bowser refused. I offered those National Guard's troops to defend Congress, and Pelosi, Schumer, Sergeant Navarro, they all refused. And then they didn't have all the police on duty that they should have been, because defending Congress is not just the building itself for the Capitol Police, but you have the specific office buildings where the House representatives have their offices, the senators in another building have their offices. So all of those offices are part of the congressional complex, which also obviously includes the U.S. Capitol. So the idea that they're gonna accuse Trump that he was an insurrectionist or he led or inspired the insurrection on January 6th, that has yet to be proven. And it doesn't have yet to be proven because he wasn't charged with it. Right. Now, they could charge him with, he inspired the protest or the riot or the penetration of the building by the protesters, but he was not charged with inspiring an insurrection.
Sure. So then the question is, the federal court, the decision from the federal court, from the Supreme Court, protect the right of the federal government, not protect Biden. So just happened Biden administration is in the federal control the federal government. So they're protect the rights of the federal government. Can we understand like this?
Basically, they're upholding the Constitution, sure, which says that the responsibilities under our federalist system or federalism system, the U.S. government has certain duties and rights. The state governments have some. And then the Constitution, it says if something is not specifically stated for the U.S. government, then the states would assume the rights to do it. But with regard to protecting the United States, protecting the border, that is a federal duty. And I think with the Supreme, I have not read the actual decision by the court, sure, but I'm presuming that their decision is based on the fact that in the long run, we want the federal government to handle the border issues.
Okay, so now I have the following question is, we have a big invasion at the border. Everybody knows that. And everybody expect the federal government to do something to stop it. Obviously, the federal government did not do anything. Instead, they encouraged the invasion. And then the state fight back. They want to protect their own state. They have their constitutional right to protect their land, their state. And then the federal government said, okay, I don't protect that, and you cannot either. So they just try to implement their policy. The policy is increase the invasion more and more. So now the question is, if the Supreme Court know what's happened there, they still protect the federal government the wrongdoing of the federal government. Is this the right thing for them to do? They're not protect the rights of the federal government. They protect the wrongdoing of the federal government. They have the right to do that, or they
But the
just
problem with that, the wrongdoing of the federal government, we have a system, we have uh, the Constitution tells the government, tells the people what they can do about wrongdoing
right,
on behalf of the president, vice president, other senior
right,
officials, mayorkas, for example.
right,
So, the answer is specified in the Constitution, but that requires that the legislative branch do its job and bring the charges.
right.
And then the judicial branch would sit in judgment of that in the U.S. Senate, where that case would be heard. But right now, you have nobody doing their job at the federal level that should be doing it, whether it's the House of Representatives, the U.S. Senate, the president, obviously, and the administration, the cabinet officers, nobody. And that's a serious problem. And I think, to me, the actual shame of this is how close we're coming to losing the republic, losing our democracy. And
Exactly.
the Democrats constantly saying that the democracy is going to be destroyed by Trump. Meantime, they're destroying it
Right,
by their own lack of doing their duty.
right, right.
That's where the problem is. Now, for emotionally, I agree 100%. The states should be able to just do whatever they need to do and say, if you're not going to close the border, we are. We're not going to allow this.
Right.
But realistically, the fear I have with that, when a Supreme Court makes a decision, or any court, the idea is what will happen in the long run as a result of that decision. We're creating a precedent of this is how we want, the government to run or the Constitution to be enforced. And so I think I'm hoping what they're looking at here is that a year from now, 2 years from now, 10 years from now, when the federal government is doing its job at the border, is controlling, who comes in and how they come in according to our laws, our immigration laws, that Democrats, and it could easily happen. You could have, what happens if Texas and Arizona elect somebody like Gavin Newsom?
Mm-hmm.
They put somebody like that in place that says, no, we're going to fight with the federal government to not let them put a wall up, to not let them block people at the border. We want to let everybody, we're a sanctuary state. We want everybody to come in. So I think this is where, we need the division of responsibility specified to match the Constitution by the Supreme Court. Now, right now, it's horrible because, excuse me, the president, the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, the House, the Senate, have all these people not doing their job. And we have mechanisms to fire officials that don't do their job. And the people that need to bring that action aren't doing their job. So, yeah, it's a massive, difficult problem right now. But I'm afraid of what would happen if the Supreme Court says, okay, states, take control of the border, whatever you want. Right now, you want protection, great. And by the way, where has Texas been for 3 years? This whole migration invasion didn't start, this year or last year. It's been ongoing since day one of the Biden administration. So
Okay.
everybody's been kind of looking at it like, wow, look at all the people coming into the United States. That's terrible. And then the Democrats saying, look at all the people coming in. They're future Democratic voters. That's great. Or they're
Mm-hmm.
going to supplement, like Senator Dick Durbin in Illinois,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm from Chicago originally. There's Durbin.
Hey, Tom, it's frozen again. Tom? Hi, Tom, can you hear me? Hello? Oh, it's happened again. Okay, I think. Hello, Tom. Excuse me, let me check with him. Excuse me, I think maybe the connection. Okay, I think he lost the connection here. I think he will be back pretty soon. So next, I'm going to ask some question regarding the decision is according to Tom, the Supreme Court are maybe are considered for the long term. Uh, okay, he's back. Good. Okay, hold on just 1 second. I'm sorry. Hey, Tom,
I'm back.
welcome back. Welcome back. Sorry, I don't know what happened. I think my connection here is right. So, can you hear me?
Yeah, and I've been
Oh,
on
okay.
Zoom a lot lately, and
Yeah.
I'm only having this happen when I'm on with you. So somewhere,
And
somewhere in the Zoom system, they don't like us being together.
well, unfortunately, we will still get together and talk about the important issues. So then I will like to ask two questions. One is the Supreme Court is considered the decision maybe for the long run, for the long term, right? Just like you described. And for short term, there are two parts of questions. One is long term. Yes, I buy your opinion that for the decision that they protect the rights of the federal government, which is good, which is constitutional, good, especially
It's not just
consider.
protecting the rights of the federal government, it's keeping state governments from usurping the rights of the federal government to do that. In other words, going beyond their powers to
Sure,
control the borders. And that's my biggest fear is that we have, especially, the Democratic Party wanting all of these migrants to become loyal Democrat voters,
right,
that if that was to happen in the long run, we may never see another Republican get elected.
right.
And therefore, if the states like Texas and Arizona, they're very close.
Mhm.
So if they elect governors like Newsom in California, um, they could easily just completely obstruct the federal government in any attempt to control the border, which they're supposed to, and just make up their own that we're a sanctuary state, we're letting everybody in. Now you look at Newsom right now, 750,000 people on the California like Medicare system, the statewide Medicare system. Now he has just stated in the last 2 weeks, that everybody that's here that's an illegal migrant qualifies for full coverage under
Right.
California health care that will be paid for by the
Mhm.
taxpayers. That also includes gender surgery. So you're talking about surgical procedures that are elective, basically, that people who are migrants can go to the state and say, okay, I want to change my sex, and you're going to have to pay a couple $100,000 for my surgery, for my therapy, for my hormone treatment, for my
Right,
afterward care.
right.
And that's what we're facing now. So you want a governor that like Newsom.
Mhm.
If we get that in Texas and Arizona in the long run, it could really be fatal if we have no protection at the southern border going forward after the Biden. I think, again, people allowed Biden to do what he's done to this country over the last 3 years. Now, I've said on other podcasts, which have, people have, criticized what I said, that Joe Biden is one of the best leaders we've ever had. Think about this. What other person has had enough leadership skill to take this country so far downhill so fast in 3 years?
Right,
Amazing leadership on his part, trying to ruin the country. And
right.
he's doing a great job. But the problem is, who's stopping him? Nobody.
Mhm.
Who's standing in his way? Nobody.
Nobody. That's it. That's it. So that's some. I think some audience just give their feedback is the federal, not the federal, the Supreme Court is the last hope of this country. So they cannot turn down to people. And what is they're doing right now is that right direction or the right decision, and people really
Well, we've had under liberal judges, we've had years of criticism of judges in general, especially the Supreme Court, making laws, that
Mhm.
they're deciding what they think the law should be, not what the Constitution says or what the laws actually say. And so
Mhm.
that's been a criticism for a long time. So
Mhm.
when you have a president come along like Trump, that's fortunate enough to get three selections on the
Mhm.
Supreme Court, 9-member court,
Mhm.
he got to pick, I should say, three. And one of the requirements that you'll often hear from a president like Trump or other Republicans before him is we want a constitutional judge. We
Right.
don't want the judge that's going to legislate from the bench, make up the laws they want to see, the
Mhm.
way they want to see it. We have laws written, we have amendments written. We want judges that are going to follow that.
Mhm.
So, along those lines, you have a Supreme Court that's basically saying that right now. We're going to follow the Constitution, even if it's even if it's still hurtful, but in the long run, what we're hoping is that this changes and that
I'm
the
just very
people.
curious, Tom. I'm sorry. Just the judges are a human being, right? Just like you and me. And human being will make mistake. So my question is, if this Supreme Court judges make mistake, is there anything that we can correct their mistake?
Well, it depends on whether it's an actual mistake or not. If they don't follow the law and do what they want to do, then and don't follow the Constitution, they can be impeached. So it's
From
we
oh,
from
okay.
their position. So we've had, during my career in the FBI, we saw a lot of them in Florida, in the South, where drug traffickers with millions of dollars bribed judges
Mhm.
uh, to be allowed to continue their drug trafficking. And in some of those cases, those judges got impeached. They got
Mhm.
removed from the bench.
Mhm.
Now, the process, a federal judge is a lifetime appointment.
Mhm.
So just like, some of the other positions at the national level, Supreme Court justice. So the only way to remove them, really, they can't be fired by the governor or the president. They have to be impeached. It's the only recourse if
Mhm.
they do wrongdoing, basically. There has to be an impeachable offense to take them out.
Sure.
So it's very tricky, but we went through, especially in the 60s, 70s, very liberal system where judges were making up laws that they wanted to see, not what was actually written in the Constitution or written in the statutes passed by Congress or other entities. So that's part of the issue with this is, do we want strict judges or that are going to follow the law, or do we want them making it up whatever they want as they go? Now, right now, in the last couple of years, we haven't heard this lately, but in the beginning of the Biden administration, coming into office, where you had Donald Trump had just been able to appoint three justices,
Mhm.
presumably conservative, um, to the court. And so the Democrats' answer to that, the US Constitution does not specify 9 judges for the Supreme Court. That's determined by Congress.
Mhm.
And what it does say in decisions are that a majority of the justices will decide, one issue or another. And so what the Democrats wanted to do was called pack the court. In other words, pass a law and say from now on, the Supreme Court is going to have 20 judges.
Mhm.
And if that passes and the Supreme Court is now expanded from 9 to 20, well, the next 11 judges are going to be picked by the current administration. They're all going to
Mhm.
be Democrats. They're all going to be liberal. They're all going to be, hopefully, in their mind, vote the way they want. So the last time packing the court came up as an issue was during Franklin Delano Roosevelt administration. When he became president at the height of the Depression, he
Mhm.
was having laws, that he backed up. Laws passed
Mhm.
basically to create many different systems, kind of welfare systems, Social Security, job programs, a number of things. And at that time, the Supreme Court threatened Roosevelt that they were going to find those laws unconstitutional. And then Roosevelt and the country's desperate because of the Depression said, okay, we're going to make more judges. We're going to pack the court, expand the Supreme Court, and therefore they'll back us up. And then what happened is Supreme Court backed off. Okay, we get the message. So that kept it. But the Supreme Court has not always been 9 justices. That's been, I forget what year that was, that, that 9 judges were made to be on the Supreme Court. But packing the court is an issue that's going to come up when the party in power thinks that the justices are deciding against them too much. Then and that's what the Democrats did, that they were, because Trump was able to appoint 3, that it looked like instead of having every decision be 5-4, 5-4, that it was going to expand to 6-3 or 7-2 based on more conservatives. So that's when they came up with, that was one threat, that they were going to pack the court 3 years ago. And the second threat was that they were going to try to give statehood to the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico. And then both of those, highly Democratic. That would mean 4 more Democrat senators. And then that would give them practically a permanent majority in the Senate. So luckily that didn't happen. So you've had these kind of political games, let's say, or power plays go back and forth for a long time. Now, right now, basically Biden did a really smart thing as president. And I don't know that he did it, but the selection of Kamala Harris, she did not win one primary during when the Democrats were holding their primaries. But for Biden to pick her, what a great insurance policy she is. Because the only public official at that level that's more unpopular than Biden is Kamala Harris. Widely recognized as incompetent, incoherent in her speech. And so the idea that, to impeach Biden is to make her president. And then that would make her an incumbent in 2024. And if Biden had already served half of his term, she could run again in 28. So she could be president of the United States for 10 years. And I think that the Republican Party and others looking at this says, we'll put up with Joe Biden because we can't fathom the idea that we would have Kamala Harris be president for 12 years.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for sharing the information and then the history of the nation. And while listening to your discussion, I'm just thinking that we are losing our country in front of our eyes. And I'd like to change my perspective from our enemy. You think talking about that there are some forces want to destroy our country, and they're doing a good job. So I think right now the enemy will be very happy because they're smart. They know how to play the system. Meaning, if Biden as a government, as a federal government, did not do anything or do the wrong thing and keep doing the wrong thing, and the Congress cannot do anything to stop him, and then the Supreme Court cannot do anything to stop him. So what can happen? We're losing this country. This is what happened. And hello, Tom? Tom? It's frozen again. I'm so sorry. But what I mean is the Supreme Court is the last hope, just like what I said. If the last hope doesn't work, and then we lose our country, is there any way that we can get this country back? I don't know. Once again, we lost him. I think something wrong with the system. Okay. I think one will come back again. So to summarize what Tom said is the Supreme Court make the decision is based on the Constitution. They follow the Constitution. But I don't know if the Constitution say anything about if the federal government or the Congress did not do their job or keep wrongdoing things. Anyone can stop them. I don't know if the Constitution have anything to say about that. But the thing is, it is happening now. The day day one from Biden get into the White House, he opened the Southern Board. So they're invited the illegal immigrants to come in this country. Oh, Tommy's back. Hello, Tom. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Nope,
Something
not your
wrong.
fault. I don't know where the problem is, but
Yeah. They don't want to listen to us to talk about that. Maybe, huh? So, yeah,
right.
I'm sorry about that. But my question is our enemy will be very happy to see what happened. They don't need the weapon to take over the country. And we kill ourselves because we follow the law. It is
Yep.
so
Yeah,
sad.
that's one of the I guess the policies of the country has been that we're going to follow our laws and live or die by those laws. But you
Mhm.
have, for example, my opinion of what's happening, and not just mine, but other philosophers, other pundits like Mark Levin, who wrote a book, American Communism.
Mhm.
Um, this communist or Marxist movement in the United States started 100 years ago.
Right.
So some of the laws, the Insurrection Act, 1917, the
Mhm.
founding of the FBI actually in 1908 was originally not to chase bank robbers or car thieves or any of that. The original mandate of the FBI was to go after basically enemies of the state,
Right.
Marxist.
Right.
Uh, Anarchist was a big issue in those days. You had bombings in different Capitol and other public buildings. And so the FBI, for the first 10 or 20 years, it was the Bureau of Investigation. Then later, the role was expanded to include all of these crimes,
Mhm.
interstate crime, the gangster era, for example, in the 20s, John Dillinger and Bonnie and Clyde and Babyface Nelson. So that led to the expansion of powers of the FBI to actually conduct criminal investigations and then when FBI agents were getting killed by gangsters, to be armed. And so that became the modern Federal Bureau of Investigation back in the 20s, 1920s. So again, 100 years ago. So now, you have this extension of Marxism has been ongoing. And what they've done is they've taken over education, higher education in particular, to indoctrinate students to look at socialism as a great thing. And you're hearing that all of the time. So, they don't really teach history in schools anymore because you have all of these students who think socialism's wonderful and don't realize, did they pay any attention to the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia that led to the Soviet Union being created,
Mhm.
the Mao taking over China, Venezuela, Castro in Cuba? These are all socialist slash communist regimes, killed millions and millions of people. And the
Mhm.
answer here, socialists in our country saying, well, that's just because it wasn't the right people running it.
Mhm.
If we had good socialists running that, no problem. Good socialists mean us. If
Mhm.
we're in charge, then that's all they care about. And so right now is what you're seeing is this gradual um, assertion that socialism is better than capitalism, that these other systems would be better than the system we have. And anybody with half of a brain would look at the systems that have been placed in the United States, capitalism system has led to this country being the richest, the freest, the smartest, all of that, which is why millions of people want to go from all over the world to get here because they know it'll be a land of opportunity. But then, of course, mixed in that group are Marxists, socialists, are people that want to bring us down at all costs, and they don't care. And so I feel like we're constantly now fighting off the people that want to bring these systems to this country, want to bring down the United States, World Economic Forum, World Trade Organization, World Health Organization. Those organizations are all designed to bring the United States down.
So
And
what the Biden administration is doing now is not only invited the illegal immigrant, um, but as meanwhile they are against their own federal law, immigration law. So the government against their own law. So the
exactly,
government is the enemy. So what can
exactly.
we do if the government is enemy and Congress can do nothing? And right now, Supreme Court cannot do anything, even though they see the country is being invaded. They do not do anything, and the reason
Well,
is
they don't make laws. They don't,
yeah, right.
they don't have law enforcement at their disposal. The executive branch has law enforcement. Legislative branch is in a position to change the laws. Now, back to the original
So
point.
let me ask this time: if the federal government do not do their job, can the state government do their job? To do they have right to protect their own land? That's the question.
Theoretically, yes, but as a practical matter, not really. And the other issue with that to think about is that you have, how many thousand miles of border with Mexico? Canada, 3,000 miles, but the Mexican US border, which is the main entry points in this, if the Supreme Court says, okay, Texas, go ahead,
Mhm.
fight with Border Patrol, do what you have to do. If you want to build your own wall, all of that. Then, then what happens is then they'll come in through Arizona. They'll just move the migration route. The
Mhm.
cartels will just move their routes over and say, okay, from now on, we'll come in through California, New Mexico, Arizona.
Mhm.
So the fight to try to stop the border immigration or migration would just continue with the different states. And it wouldn't be accomplished as long as the Biden administration would fight them at every level. So
If
the
mhm.
answer is we've got to get rid of the Biden administration, period. They've got to be voted. Since nobody will bring charges against them, the whole responsibility for our government is now falling on the hands of the people where it was intended by the founding fathers. The voters will determine to throw these people out. And that's what has to happen here. Now, what's been sad is to see cities continue to vote in Democratic mayors that have run the cities for 50 years and run them into the ground. Or now, the fact that you see Biden with 30, 35%, 40% support, who are these people? I mean, I look at it like, okay, this sounds terrible, but I think, how stupid can you be? The damage that this man and his administration has done to this country in 3 short years, and a
Right.
third of the people want more, think it's great. Let's have more of this guy or his policies. That's where now, if that third becomes a majority, then we are going to lose the country. Now, you look at many, going back to the writings of the founding fathers and the Federalist Papers talking about how you could lose your country. And, a lot of people don't realize that at the time the country was founded, you couldn't vote unless you owned property.
Right.
You had to be
Right.
a man and you had to own property, both. And the reason for the property was that you would have a stake in the outcome of the election because you're protecting your own property and your own family
So
by who you vote for.
yeah, I'm thinking about the 2A, the second commitment is the gun, right? The gun rights. If the three branches all fail, then people have their gun. Do we really need to do that?
Maybe,
Sometimes
but
just have
that was
like,
the issue at the time of the founding. Was now here's the problem with that issue on the Second Amendment. At the time of the founding, you had the revolutionaries, the Americans, take on the British. Well, the weaponry was pretty close.
mhm,
Now, the British had huge, great ships, but that's at the water ports, blocking the entrance to the country that way. Then
mhm,
you have, the guns are about the same. So you have muskets in the British Army, you have muskets in the Revolutionary Army. You have cannons on the British side, cannons on the Revolutionary side. One side didn't have jets, nuclear weapons, sophisticated artillery and weaponry to disturb that balance. But at the time, the founders didn't know that. So they wanted in the Constitution, Second Amendment, that the right to bear arms would not be taken away by the government, because it might be the very government that the people would need the guns to protect themselves from. So it wasn't designed as a crime-stopping measure to have the people be armed. It was designed that the government would not be in a position to take over. Now, if you look at the countries, the Marxist countries, one of the very first, if not the first policy when they took office was take away the guns from the people, make it impossible. And you saw this, obviously, Soviet Union, you saw it, China, Cuba, Venezuela. First thing to go, take the guns. And then the people, what are they going to do? Government has the guns, people don't. They have sticks and stones and knives, not enough to protect themselves. So that Second Amendment, and when the founding fathers decided on the Bill of Rights, which is the first 10 amendments, look at the order they put them in. First Amendment, freedom to speak, freedom to assemble, freedom of religion.
Right.
They regarded that as just critical. What do we have the government trying to do now? Even the Biden administration, censorship. And the pursuit of January 6th is to send a message to the people. Don't even think about assembling anymore. Don't think about sending each other emails. Hey, let's meet at this park and have a protest. That was all the enforcement of J6 laws was designed to intimidate the people. Yeah, the First Amendment's on paper, looks good, but you don't think about using it. Don't think about having freedom of speech, freedom of assembly. And then you see what they're trying to do with religions, and make that difficult. So those are right off the bat being fought by the government. Then you have the Second Amendment. That was the next thing. The weapons. Don't take the weapons away from the people. The right to have a militia, the right to protect themselves from tyranny. Then you get into the other ones about right to lawyers and protection in your home and guarantees against illegal searches and seizure of your property and those type of things. But if people knew nothing else, the importance of the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, these are rights that the people are given to protect themselves from the government. And nobody else has that. You don't have any other country has a Bill of Rights. And if we lose if we lose even one or two or three of those amendments, we're going to lose. We're going to lose the country.
So I have a very interesting question. We have the Bill of Rights. Yes. So we have the rights to protect ourselves, to protect our family, to protect our land. That's our constitutional rights as people. And then we're talking about one situation. If there are people in Texas, a U.S. citizen, was killed by an illegal immigrant. So the killer is the immigrant, the illegal immigrant, but the other should be the Biden administration, because their policy allowed these people to get into this country, right?
Right.
So at this situation, at this case, the federal government under Biden is the criminal as well.
I agree.
And then the other thing is we have two danger faced to us. One is a future danger. The other one is immediate danger, current danger. If the Supreme Court is considered a future danger, which is when Trump becomes the president and the Democrats stayed against the federal government under Trump, I check with that. It's a good consideration. And on the other hand, we have current danger, which is we have so many illegal people with zero background check get into our country. This is invasion and this is a war. We need to stop it. If the Biden administration don't do that, they invited that they're our enemy, and the Congress can do nothing, then this is the duty or the history duty of the Supreme Court to stop, to protect our nation from being invasion for such long time. This is protect the wall. So they did not do it. They just stand with our enemy, stand with the wrongdoing, stand with
the Supreme Court is not supposed to be making laws. They're supposed to look at a case
right.
and see what law applies, whether it's statutory passed by Congress.
My question is, if we have a wall and the federal government is not against our enemy, so what the
answer is that we have to change the federal government. And the mechanisms to do that are elections and impeachments. And that has to come from the people. It has to come from the people that get elected by the people, the citizens. And right now we've had a complacency in this country about who we're electing. Oh, nothing changes, not that important, no big deal. And we're seeing now that it is a big deal. Now, back when President Reagan was president, he said we could lose our democracy in one generation.
Yes, I remember
and
that.
Right now, you're seeing that generation right now.
Yeah.
And so the question is, how many, and Trump, by the way, is saying in his rallies, we need to have so many people vote and win by so much, overwhelming majority, that it's too much for them to cheat and make up for. Now, it's a heck of a statement that we have all of this cheating under the current system. And if we had paper ballots, same day voting, they wouldn't be able to do this much. And citizen, voter ID, they wouldn't be able to do it. Oh no, we got to have 45 days of voting. We have to have drop boxes. We have all of these things that the Democrats were able to put in and use the pandemic as an excuse. And that's how Trump lost the election, or how Biden got elected, much less what they did in the counting rooms and all of that. So going back to your original question, what can we do? Obviously voting is critical, but not just voting, protecting the process of voting. So we need people to volunteer to work at polling places, volunteer. And if they're at a polling place and Trump is winning by so much, and at midnight the people running the polling station, the Democrats decide, okay, we're done for the night, everybody can go home. Don't go home. You stay there and have a camera with you. So when they bring in the bundles of all of a sudden these mysterious votes that come in, you're photographing that, gathering the evidence of the voter fraud in progress. Or if drop boxes are still using, get people to volunteer to take videos of those boxes of who's coming, who's dropping off ballots, how many are they dropping off, and gather the evidence. I think right now, last election, 2020 especially, people just took for granted, well, the voter fraud won't be that bad. They won't be able to steal that many votes.
Right.
Well, now we have the result of it. And then you have the Democrats going after any Republican, including the president, if they dare to question the outcome, if they dare to say there should be an investigation. So I think it's going to be the citizens. If you're going to take the time to knock on doors during the campaign and go to rallies and do all of that, then get everybody in your state, county, township, district to volunteer to set up coverage to watch these polls and watch for the potential fraud, the cars that are going to show up with bags of ballots to stuff into the box, all of that type of thing. We need people to volunteer to protect this coming election. Because if we don't, it may be the last free election.
I totally agree with you. This is a wall. It is not just a general election. This is the moment that decide our future or decide if the nation still exists. I'm just thinking that if we lost our country,
excuse me,
then Constitution means nothing.
Now
right,
watching a lot of the different YouTube videos, the different pundits, especially, you're seeing the signs that wokeism, the people are turning against this whole woke philosophy
right,
more and more.
right.
So we have a chance, if we can keep this going, to educate the public that you need to pay attention. You
Mm-hmm.
need to really watch what's going on with this election coming up, and don't put up with all of these policies. And we've seen these policies actually bring down so many institutions in the government. Now
Mm-hmm.
you have the military as an example. More and more young men and women are getting out of the military or not going in the first place to join
Mm-hmm.
because they see that it's fixed. Who's going to get promoted? LBGTQ plus plus, they're going to
Right,
get promoted. Especially if you're a white male, you're not getting promoted. You're going to be discriminated against. So we have the reverse discrimination now
right,
based on the group's
right.
identity or the person's color of their skin or all of that. So, I found it interesting. We just celebrated Martin Luther King's holiday, recently, and his birthday. King would be banned. He'd be canceled if he was around today.
Sure.
That you're going to be judged by the content of your character rather than your skin color? Oh, no, 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 no. We're not going to have that. We
Mhm.
go right now, we're going to go by your color of your skin or your sexual orientation. That's what matters, not if you're good or bad or competent or incompetent.
Mhm.
And that's what we're seeing. But we're seeing the people finally starting to wake up and realize, we can't have this.
Right, right,
We need
right,
our country run. We need a meritocracy back.
right.
That's one of my complaints about the way the FBI is operating these days. That some of the people that I see in high positions making some of the decisions they're making, I'm
Mhm.
looking back at my 29 years, it was a meritocracy. You
Mhm.
didn't get hired, you didn't get promoted based on your skin color, your sexual orientation, whether you were gay or not gay or any of that, or
Mhm.
who your parents were, or if your daddy was a senator. Oh, that's good. You're going to get promoted. None of that. And
Mhm.
now, I don't see the actual inside workings because I'm on the outside, but things aren't right by
Yeah.
some of these decisions being made.
So
And
basically, people need to wake up. People need to get involved in every level that we can. So the decision from the Supreme Court showing us that our three branches are all fall down. The last hope is not at the Supreme Court. The last hope is at people like you, like me, like everybody here. We need to fight back. We need to get out. We need to vote. We need to get involved to take back this country. This is our last hope, is on our own hands. We need to do the right thing and do it right now.
agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Yeah. So to talk about the election, back to the election. For New Hampshire, what's your prediction and what do you and the VP of President Trump, where is a hot topic. People are just like a puzzle who going to be the
Yeah.
VP.
Well, I think right now with the election, the expectation that I would have is that Trump is going to win, obviously, by a lot.
Mhm.
Now, how big, how much he wins by is very, very important
Mhm.
because, now it's down to he's against Nikki Haley. And
Mhm.
Nikki Haley has a lot of detractors because she's basically she's a neocon. The
Right.
neocon movement are basically the people that have been running this country for the last 20, 30 years that want endless war.
Mhm.
The neocons wanted the war with Iraq, even though Iraq was not threatening us, even if they had to make up lies about weapons of mass destruction. And neocons, by the way, they don't actually want to win. The United States doesn't try to win wars anymore. They
Mhm.
just try to fight them
Me too.
forever
Yeah,
because
right,
it's a money trough for
right,
the
right.
defense industry. And
Mhm.
that's the difference. So Vietnam, the military expansion in Vietnam that started under under Kennedy and Eisenhower, they had 15,000 advisors to the Vietnamese army. But under Johnson, that's when the expansion of actual war fighters happens. All the way up to, by the late 60s, the United States had over 500,000 troops in South Vietnam. Now, from the military industrial complex, that's fine. So the war really starts in earnest 1964, and the helicopters are leaving the rooftop of the embassy in Saigon April 1975. So 11 years of war, trillions of dollars, 58,000 U.S. soldiers killed. How many other hundreds of thousands amputee victims and maimed for life? But that's fine with the military industrial. They made trillions of dollars. So we don't care if we win or lose. We just keep fighting. Right. And you look at Iraq, similar thing. We fight the war in Iraq, spend $1 trillion. We don't lose as many people as Vietnam, but after spending that $1 trillion, look at Iraq today, loyal to Iran. What did we win that war? No, not really, not in the long run, but we sure spent a lot of money for a long time, still spending it, and lost a lot of people injured and killed in Vietnam. Now you look at the battles since then. Look what we're doing with the Ukraine. Now, some estimates, they have lost between 400,000 and 500,000 troops killed in the Ukraine going after Russia as a surrogate for us to go after Russia, because the neocons hate Russia. And they try to portray Russia completely as this is the old Soviet Union, godless communism running Russia, and not realizing that Putin for the last 15 years he's a Christian. He's an Orthodox Christian. He backs up the Orthodox Christian movement. And actually, the birthplace of Orthodox Christianity is in Kiev, in the Ukraine. So, that's his philosophy, is basically have Russia be strong, make Russia great, that type of thing. He's never expressed any, he didn't even have an offensive capable army to do invasion of Western Europe like everybody was saying and all of that. He developed the capable army he's got today, starting 2 years ago, when our administration, the neocons in our government, said, we're going to come after you. We're going to invade Russia, dismember your country, and topple Putin, kill Putin. Well, okay. So then they start their factories and military expansion, which is about double or triple what it was just 2 years ago. So we have a group of people that just want to keep making money. And the Ukraine is a perfect example of it, with the added benefit. I believe the Ukraine, Biden keeps sending any amount they ask for because he's corrupt by them. So they own him. They'll expose him and his corruption if he doesn't do what they say. And so he does it.
So Nikki Haley is one of them.
And Nikki Haley is one of them.
So you think that Trump going to win the New Hampshire, and the next one is South
Carolina. And so the question everybody has is, will the big donors who have big money and could go on forever if they want, the donors, are they going to have her be able to say, okay, she's going to drop out? She's on the verge going into South Carolina that she will lose way bigger, probably even worse than Iowa. And does she want to be humiliated in her home state where she was the governor? That's how much pride does she have? Any? We'll find out.
Does she care about that?
Does she care about it?
Losing her friends?
I don't know. She's trying to stay in a position to make money from the military. And that's her big donor group. And we'll see if that continues or what, or whether they look at it and go, maybe she's just not the person that's going to be able to win the Republican nomination. So
we'll see. And then the last question is related to the election. Is we saw Soros' son, Alex Soros, he posted X 2 pictures. Do you see that?
I didn't see the pictures, no.
So you know what's happened, right? The two pictures, one picture is a window shooting by a gun, and the other picture together is the dollars, and the dollars value is 47. So
Okay.
people have different explanation about what's that mean. So
Okay.
it looks not good, right?
No, no, no. And Soros, the son is supposed to be as bad or worse than the father,
Right.
George Soros. So, we'll see. Probably is. But again, for our country to wake up. So, Soros is putting all this money, and it was a brilliant
Oh,
strategy
right.
to put in prosecutors that won't prosecute
Right.
in all the
Right.
major cities.
That's the thing.
So
Yeah.
it's caused an enormous deterioration in the
Mhm.
quality of life in every major city in the
Right.
country: New York, Chicago, Philadelphia, Washington, San
Mhm.
Francisco, Los Angeles. And
Mhm.
so, but now that the people know that that's who's put money into their prosecutors, and
Mhm.
that's created the crime wave, because when they don't prosecute, that causes the police to become
Mhm.
frustrated and give up and quit. Police departments being dismantled or defunded, all of those issues. So the quality of life in every major city in the United States has deteriorated drastically in the last couple of years just based on that.
Right.
So the only other answer to that is for the people to wake up and know, pay attention to who's running for state's attorney or district attorney, your county prosecutor. Pay attention to the reports on what's their background and who's funding them, who's
Mhm.
putting them out there. And if they're Soros backed, they're going to ruin your city.
Right.
So these are all areas that if the public tries to pay attention, tries to get smart, try to educate itself on who these people are that they keep voting for, then
Mhm.
maybe that's another chance at the state, local level, as well as all the way up to president,
Mhm.
having an enlightened electorate that
Mhm.
knows what they have to do to straighten out this country.
Mhm. Well, thank you so much for sharing, for discussion. And my take is that we really, every U.S. citizen who really love this country, we need to take our time seriously to care about our local government, care about our election, the congressman, congresswoman from our district, take care of
Even lower, start at the school board, county
well,
supervisors,
right, right,
state legislatures, state senators, state representatives,
right.
governors, all the way up, the infrastructure of the party. Now, if you look at, for instance, the Democratic Party, they have a classification of delegates that will
Right.
go to their convention this summer that are called super delegates.
Mhm.
And the super delegates are picked because they were dog catchers, they were whatever, started at low level jobs in the Democratic Party, and they've been in the Democratic Party since, at county, state, local level, all the way up to Congress. And then they get designated a super delegate and can vote. They can come vote who they want at the
Mhm.
convention. Very, very powerful.
Mhm.
So again, the answer is going to be whoever these people pick to be the president and the vice presidential candidates. Really, really start at the level in your county, your hometown, and pay attention. Pay attention, because these people, they may start out as the dog catcher in your town, but they're going to eventually, if they're loyal to the Democratic Party, they're going to become super delegates. They're going to become members of Congress, maybe even president. And so it's really in all of our hands to try to protect ourselves by who we put in office.
Right. Thank you so much. Thank you. And I really appreciate our audience. They let me see their feedback. Well, just many thanks to Tom to telling the truth, to share the information that it is a critical time that the future of this country depends on everyone. It's on our hands.
More than ever.
Yeah.
And again, the complacency that we've had the last several elections is really almost a tribute to how great the country is in general, that almost on autopilot, it's continued to function and make money for the people and be a safe, generally a safe place and all that. This whole thing with Marxism catching up with the rest of us has just happened really since Biden, more than ever since
Right,
Biden.
right.
And I think that that should be the wake up call to everybody that Biden and all of these people, they have to be thrown out. We have to get rid of them.
Right, right. Our enemy works very hard. We should be work harder than them. Start
Agreed.
from the local, start from waking up to vote, to get involved.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you again. Really appreciate it. And I will do the Chinese version later for this
Okay.
program.
Yeah, I'm not in a hurry to get the Chinese version.
Some audience just said, "Oh, I cannot wait for the Chinese version."
Oh, I
Where,
know. I
yeah,
know. And I envy them that they can speak fluent Chinese, but I can't,
right.
unfortunately. But
That's fine. You have me, so
I
we'll,
have you. That's exactly right. And I'm grateful for that. So thank
thank you
you.
so much. Thank you. All right, I will see you next Tuesday.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so very much.
Okay.
We'll
Take
have a
care.
lot to talk. Okay, thank you.
You're
Bye,
welcome,
Tom.
Cheyenne. Bye bye.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.